When I'm not being justifiably upset at how unfair it is that my mom cut my back-to-school clothes budget this year, I like to answer questions that I get on YouTube, so let's get to it. Okay, top 5 dudes, and while we're on dudes and storytelling, what about the tallest man on earth? So this is kind of in relation to last week's video, where I listed my top 5 favorite bands, and then how I said that some of them, like Elliott Smith wasn't in my top 5 favorite bands because he's a dude and not a band. Weird distinction, I know. So we're gonna start with my top 5 favorite dudes, which I suppose in order are gonna be Elliott Smith, number 1, top spot, Jimi Hendrix, Josh Homme, John Frusciante, Jack White, honorable mention Matt Bellamy. Now I'm also gonna list my top 5 favorite dudettes, which number 1 would be Fiona Apple. Number 2 is Annie Clark of St. Vincent. Norah Jones, Janelle Monáe, and Amy Mann. Honorable mention, Stevie Nicks. I know music is personal, but in what way is Radiohead and Muse better than Zeppelin? They are good, but question, question, question. So I had Radiohead, number 1, favorite bands, Muse number 2, and Zeppelin was in my top 5. And now by no means does that mean top 5 greatest bands ever. If that were a list, I would probably put Zeppelin at number 1. Those are just my top 5 favorite bands. And I think it's actually very impressive that Zeppelin even made it into my top 5, whereas I have absolutely no cultural tie to them whatsoever because they broke up before I was even born. And I think, for me anyways, when it comes to like picking like favorite bands, I think being around and kind of active in music at the time that a band is in their heyday is a very important part of who your favorite bands are, especially for me, because there's like a whole other kind of cultural significance that is added on top of it. Kind of like just the anticipation of a new album coming out, like being able to kind of, you know, grow with the band and really see firsthand how they evolve, how they change. Whereas with Zeppelin, I didn't really ever listen to Zeppelin in albums. It was all through compilations, it was all like greatest hit stuff, and then kind of going back and listening to the albums. But that's why like when someone asks me like what my favorite Zeppelin album is, I really don't even, I mean, I generally kind of have an idea of which songs are on which albums, but to me, they're not albums just because I wasn't around then. They're all just kind of like, you know, a conglomeration of songs. Whereas the other bands in my top 5 are bands that I distinctly remember getting excited about and kind of feeling more of a connection. So just the fact that Zeppelin was in the top 5, having zero cultural connection with them, I mean, maybe not zero because they're still, you know, obviously incredibly influential, but not being around for their heyday, I think is a great testament to just what an amazing, ridiculous, otherworldly, godly, timeless band that Zeppelin is. What kind of shampoo do you use? Why, thank you for asking. I'm a Paul Mitchell tea tree shampoo guy. So maybe that could be the next endorsement. We'll see. The blues comes from the heart, and you simply cannot fake that. Forget the technical bits and play from what you feel inside. What is it about the blues that like makes people think you don't have to know anything about how to play the blues and you're just supposed to feel your way through it without like knowing what you're doing at all? I don't know. I get so many comments about not being able to fake the blues. You know what? I can fake the blues. A lot of people fake the blues. I understand a lot of it comes from the heart, as does any genre of music that is genuine. But I don't know, salty blues, what can you say? What model is that Martin guitar? So this is the newest guitar to the collection. This is a Martin GPCPA4, which is the absolute worst name for a guitar. Like, talk about a model number that does not flow off the tongue. The new GPCPA4, I think it's, whatever. Aside from that, it's actually a pretty awesome guitar. I had to get it because I love my Taylor GA3. It's a fantastic guitar. I still prefer the sound of that straight up acoustic, but I needed something to gig with a little bit more, preferably with a cutaway, and the electronics on this sound absolutely awesome. Like, I'm not a huge fan of acoustic guitar electronics. I always kind of like the sound of it mic'd up. The electronics in this are the best I've heard, and it's fantastic, so if you get your hands on it, I definitely urge you to try it because they're fantastic guitars, even though I wish they could have a little bit of a cooler name. Yes, Queens of the Stone Age. What is your favorite album, and what do you think of Villains? So new Queens of the Stone Age came out. last week. Totally stoked. Mark Ronson produced. A lot of people were worried about that. They were worried for no reason because it's a fantastic album. It rocks from beginning to end. I'm totally into it, but it's still kind of different from a lot of their other albums, which is something I totally appreciate because I think almost better than... I can't really even think of another band that has been able to keep the core of what they do intact but still have every single album sound differently. So when it comes to picking like a favorite Queens of the Stone Age album, that was actually like really hard for me. Usually in most bands that I like, I have like a definitive, like a pretty clear-cut answer. Even if there's a lot of great albums, I'd be like, okay, this one's my favorite. It's hard for me to answer what my favorite Queens of the Stone Age album is. And after thinking about it long and hard, I actually am gonna say Lullabies to Paralyze, just because I think that's, I mean, it's hard to even explain. It's just, they're all so tight. They sound fantastic. Songs for the Deaf. It was pretty much between Lullabies and Songs for the Deaf that I was like really struggling over. But I think Lullabies is just a little bit tighter. And man, they're also good though. So definitely, if you don't know Queens of Stone Age, for sure, check them out. Thoughts on Ryan Adams? I already asked this on your solo stream, but you said you wanted me to comment on a video so you could answer it on the Q&A. Thank you so much for following my specific instructions. And Ryan Adams, I kind of feel like I now officially have thoughts on Ryan Adams. I always knew he was a talented guy, really prolific songwriter for sure, and specifically his album Gold, I think is, you know, borderline masterpiece. It's something I definitely think you should check out because when he really hits the mark on something, I think he's really just like, he's so good. He's just such a great songwriter, but I think that he really tries to be as famous as he possibly can, and a lot of times he will very frequently miss the mark, and I kind of feel like some of it isn't really totally genuine. Case in point, like, I think he did he covered the previous Taylor Swift album from beginning to end, and was kind of like touting that, and I was just like, what's the point of this? Why would you do that? And I saw he was on like a talk show, I think, or one of those like night shows where he played one of the songs off of it, and then he was kind of talking about it, and they're like, well, how long did it take you to do this? He's like, oh, me and my band got together and we did the whole thing in 5 days. And it's like, wow, that's really impressive. Like, you know, it's really not that impressive for a band to play crappy Taylor Swift covers and just kind of throw them together and record them in 5 days. It's not impressive at all. So Ryan Adams is almost kind of a perplexing guy because, again, all the talent in the world, some crazy stories about him for sure, but very hit or miss. That being said, when he hits, and they're great songs. So for listening homework this week, I'm going to link you to one of the times where Ryan Adams totally nailed it, and definitely let me know what you guys think. Also, let me know who your top 5 dudes and dudettes are, because I'd love to kind of see what everybody else thinks. So if you have any questions or comments, hit me up in the comment section, Instagram, Twitter, or the website, and I will talk to you soon. Thank you very much.